We are here this evening for the purpose of conducting a renewal. As permitted by Governor Fisker's Executive Orders 2020-07 and 2020-33, the Park and River Forest High School Board of Education of County, Illinois is convening a remote special board meeting on today's date. Board members, citizens, and staff may participate in the meeting virtually. The state continues to operate under a disaster declaration related to COVID-19 worldwide pandemic. The health department continues to advise the community to practice social distancing, wear face masks, and avoid unnecessary contact with others. And based on these public health concerns, I, Sarah Spivey, as head of the public body, do not believe this is a practical, including to hold an in-person meeting of the Board of Education on today's date. I further believe that it's neither practical nor prudent for the public to be present at public body's regular meeting location. We're going to continue to hold remote meetings with updated practices to comply with Public Act 101-640 that was signed by Governor Fisker on June 12, 2020. Gail, could you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Kopsky?
Here.
Dr. Maharaj?
Here.
Mr. Henry?
Here.
Mr. Martiri?
Here.
And Ms. Dixon Spivey?
Here.
Before you do public comments, if I might, for the people who are watching us, under the governor's orders, the most recent governor's orders, fully vaccinated adults can be in a public meeting as long as they are at a social distance of 3 feet or more, and the 3 of us in the room are at a distance of more than 3 feet. The second rationale for us being unmasked today is that we are in a facility that right now does not have air, and it is extremely warm, and there are fans in the background. And so in order to get the meeting going in a more expedient manner, and for you to hear us in a explicit way, we will be speaking very closely to our mics as well.
And please do let us know if you can't hear us due to the fans, which I think we have like 7 or something. Okay. All right, Gail, do we have any visitor comments this evening? Public comment?
I'm sorry, what?
Do we have any public comment this evening?
No, we don't.
Thank you. Our first items are related to approval of the minutes. So I move to approve the May 13, 2021 committee of the whole meeting minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Did anyone have any amendment to the minutes as presented? All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
As we go to the finance section, the first item we have is substitute rates for the 2021-2022 school year. Upon completion of the presentation, this is in compliance to strategic plan priority 2 and priority 4, board goal 1, and district policy 5:220. At the completion of the presentation, we respectfully ask that the board move this item to the regular board meeting to be held on June 24th. Daily substitute rate at $130 per day, and long-term substitute and permanent substitute rate to be changed to $200 a day, effective the 2021-2022 school year. Bringing forward the presentation is Dr. Roxana Sanders, Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. Dr. Sanders.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I got a message that I was muted.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So last year, the board temporarily approved the increase of daily rate for our substitutes from 120 a day to 150 a day. This was in response to the increased need for qualified subs due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We, at that time, were very specific that it's a temporary rate in order for us to get through the year, and that we would bring the rate to the board again in preparation for the 2021-22 school year. So we are recommending to decrease it from 150 a day, but increase it compared to what it was before at 120 a day. The reason for it is for us to remain competitive with other school districts that many of them have increased rates in response to COVID, and some of them have not decreased them permanently. We are also recommending increasing the long-term substitute rate, and that is the rate for assignments that last a minimum of 20 consecutive days, as well as the rate for permanent subs. Permanent substitutes we have currently 3 positions. That is an individual that is assigned on a daily basis to cover last-minute absences. And we have one for PE, one for special education, and one for general education. That rate was established back in 2018. The long-term rate that is aligned to has not been increased since 2010. Are there any questions?
Questions by board members?
Yes.
Okay, Tom, please jump in.
So my first question's a request. As a financial matter, when we have something, we should include in the request what the impact is on the district's finances. Rates don't mean much, or they mean something, but we should include what the net dollar impact is and whether those dollars are budgeted. And that's specifically for this request, but I would say that should be for whenever we're bringing a financial matter to the district, to the board.
Very well bring forth the budgeted portion, because we do budget for substitutes, to know the exact net cost would be determined based upon probably an average estimated cost at this point, because from day to day, the need for a sub may change. But we can look at what our average substitute use is and give you an estimated cost for that.
Well, a budget is an estimate anyway. So yes. This is just an estimate, and everything in the budget is in some ways an estimate. So that's my request. My question beyond that, and it relates, so it is my understanding that this is included in the budget, but that our total substitution budget of $770,000 is it is significantly above what it was in 2019 at $636,000. So I would like to have some understanding, since we are doing kind of zero-based budgeting, how we get from one number to a different number, which is a 21% increase. Thank you.
636,000 was not the budget for the previous year. It's an average for the past 3 years, not including the last year, which was an anomaly due to COVID. But it really fluctuates. And I don't know if Cindy could give us a little more detail, but I know at some point we were at over 750. The other year we were below 600. So that's the average for the past 3 years, not including the 2021 school year.
Right. It's based on the need. We put in, just like you said, Tom, it's an estimate that we put in for the budget. We try to estimate usually the 3 years, and we take a look at it and we build it into the next budget. This one was a higher budget only because we weren't sure if we would ever come back with COVID. I mean, if people had to be off and we had to have more subs than we normally would have to have. So this year was a little bit higher. That's why we had that this budget at 770,000. But normally we've seen it go from 623. I've seen 623 up to almost 740 of what we've had in cost. And again, it depends on who's out and long-term subs.
Questions from board members?
Yeah, I just have one, Sarah, and it's sort of a universal one. And frequently when we get it's aligned with Tom's. So I had Tom's same question. So thanks for asking those, Tom. But in addition, we frequently, when we're asked to approve something or look at something, get told many other school districts have raised, some have done it temporary. Give us the data. Whenever you're referencing what others are doing, I'd like to have sort of an idea of how many others and which ones are temporary and which ones are permanent and what is the range. I mean, you've already done the work because you've looked at the information, you've collected the data. It'd be nice to share the specific data with the board whenever you're making a report like this, that you're basing a request on things being done by X number of other districts. Like to know who those districts are, like to know the range, et cetera. So just give us the backup data in a table, and that'd be very helpful.
And we provided that data when we asked for the increase to 150. Right now, we're at the beginning of the change in rates, so we don't have the data for all the school districts of what will have decided to do that. We only have for some that reported it.
It'd be nice to share with us the data you have. Can you do that?
Yes.
Sabrina or Mary Ann, do you have questions? Okay, thank you. No, I don't have any questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next item is the social workers service contract with Lisa Garvin for the 21-22 school year. The term of the contract would be July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. And the contracted amount listed $55 per hour, 3 days a week, or 21 hours per week for 44 weeks, for a total of $50,820. At the conclusion of the presentation, it is recommended that the item be moved forward for the June 24th board meeting in an amount not to exceed $50,820. This item is in compliance with strategic plan priority 2 and 4 and district policy 4:60. Making the presentation is Ms. Shalima Francois Blue, Executive Director of Special Education, and Ms. Carolyn Gus, Director of Purchasing and Transportation.
Thank you, Dr. Pruitt-Adams. Good evening, everyone. This is, as Dr. Pruitt-Adams said, bringing to the board a contract for special education contractual services for social work services provided by Ms. Lisa Garvin. Just as a part of kind of some background knowledge, Lisa Garvin is currently a contractor with our district. She has been working with us for the past 2 years, or at least this year and last year, as a school social worker, working with our clinicians as providing functional support and overseeing IEP goals for some of our diverse learners. We are looking to increase her time from 2 days per week to 3 days per week. There will be some specific work that she will be doing as part of therapeutic intervention for some of our students. And we looked to see what could we do in order to make sure that we had staff that was continuous, that has a relationship with our students as opposed to looking elsewhere right now. We do have no change to the hourly rate, which will be the same, just an increase to in FTE from 2 days per week to 1 day per week. Also, as Dr. Pruitt-Adams indicated, this contract for Ms. Lisa Garvin will not exceed the indicated amount of $50,820 for the school year of 21-22. Are there any questions?
Any questions from the board? Sam?
Yeah, I have a comment, more than a question. Thanks for the information. Thanks for including the dollar amount that you're requesting. My comment pertains to this and the next 3 contracts, so I'm going to try to be concise, and my comment pertains to them all. This contract is for a service that we have in-house resources and we are supplementing, correct?
These are for the resources that we provide to students that by staff that are currently in our district as well. We have in-district social workers.
Correct.
We don't have and speech pathologists, but our occupational therapist is one that we do contract with.
Okay, so it just would be helpful to me that if we're, where we're supplementing resources, just to paint that picture out. What we're doing is, we are extending to manage your caseload, but we do have in-house resources as part of it. That's just would be helpful to me to understand.
Sure, sure. We do have in-house, so we do have district social workers. Yes, you're correct.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, and we're just choosing in this context to use contract resources because it's partial versus bringing in-house or however you're doing that. We've had this discussion for years. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I have a question comment similar to Tom's. It impacts all three agreements, and it's just about something in our form agreement. So this isn't really for you, Shalina. I guess this is more for Dr. Pruitt-Adams or Dr. Johnson. Now, congratulations, Dr. Johnson. I love saying that. We have this section 1D, claim in addition to agreement amount in all of these services agreements, which strikes me as a very odd provision. And and I'm just saying this as a former business lawyer, when you entered into an agreement to hire a consultant or an independent contractor for any reason, you specified their compensation and that was it. There was never a provision literally in the agreement that says the consultant can make a claim for additional compensation because of action taken by the school district. So I don't know why these clauses are in here unless they are some sort of standard school thing that I don't know about. But maybe we should check with our lawyers because I just find it to create an ambiguity about the final payments due that doesn't seem to be merited. Someone can always ask for an amendment to the agreement to cover additional services they had to provide if we ask them to do that. They would have to do that in advance. You don't need a contractual provision that says they can do that. So I find it makes me uncomfortable and I don't necessarily like it. But if it's standard practice, is something that every school district does, then maybe we're stuck with it. So I'm just asking the general question.
So I'm going to ask Ms. Carolyn Duss. She's our Director of Purchasing and Transportation. This is a contract that is developed by our legal counsel. Maybe she has the answer to your question. If not, she can find that response. Discuss.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the question, Mr. Martiri. This is normally what I have seen in standard contracts for a school district, but I'm happy to go back and speak with counsel and express your concerns and see if maybe that's something we can remove to make you more comfortable.
Yeah, it's just a clarification thing. It's really not standard practice outside the school world, I can tell you that. And so, but I don't know, and I'm not going to pretend like I have the expertise to know if it is standard practice in the school world. So
I will definitely get that for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Any other questions from board members? Mary Ann? No? All right, I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is the contract for physical therapist services with supplemental health care for the year 2021-2022. At the conclusion of this presentation, we will be asking that we move the contract forward at the June 24th board meeting in an amount not to exceed $72,885. And making this presentation is Ms. Selima Francois.
Thank you, Dr. Pruitt-Adams. You're going to hear me do a little bit of repeating, being a little bit repetitive here. So this is another contract for contractual services for physical therapists. I will lead by saying physical therapists are very, very difficult to kind of hire directly on a full-time basis unless you're a pre-K through 12th grade district or pre-K through 8th grade district, primarily because of the uniqueness of the types of services they have and depending upon the number of students who require that level of functional support for mobility services. So this is an item being brought forth for contractual services, as Dr. Pruitt-Adams indicated, with supplemental health care. We have been working with supplemental health care also and have looking to continue our relationship with them Virginia Parole, or the staff member that has been contracted with through them, has been with us for quite some time now. We are looking at an increase of 4% at the hourly rate for this contract. And as Dr. Pruitt-Adams indicated, we are looking for this not to exceed $72,885 for the 21-22 school year. Any questions about that one, or is it the same? Okay.
Oh, just one question. Can you hear me, Shalima?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thanks. Can you just briefly explain the 4% increase? I know it's not that big of a deal. I just want to know, was that requested by the provider, or was that just something y'all? I just want to understand why.
Yes, good question. Great question. Yes, for the agent, the provider that we're contracting with had an increase to their hourly rate. We're having worked with a variety of different agencies for contract for services in a school district. You will see occasionally over time some increase in their either hourly rate or daily rate for some of their contractors. So we hadn't seen an increase in a while, but this is an increase that they did have for this year.
So this is we've had this contract for a while. This is the first increase in what, 3, 4, 5 years? I mean, is there?
To my knowledge, she has been with us for the past, I want to say Virginia Parole has been with us for the past 4 years, I think, Carolyn.
Okay.
Been with us for that long? Yes.
It's first increase? Okay.
Yes. Which is something we look to see. If it had not, an increase annually would be of concern. It would be, right. We would look to go out for a different vendor to work with.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions from other board members?
The next item is speech pathologist. That's what I just said.
No.
Okay. The next item is the speech pathologist, speech therapist contract for Dr. Eileen Brand for her speech pathology services for the 21-22 school year. At the conclusion of this presentation, this too is for the term of July 1, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. The hourly rates are indicated. The next step would be that this item be brought forward for the June 24th Board of Education meeting for services ranging in the amount of $57,750 to $69,300. This item is in compliance with strategic plan priority 2 and 4 and board district policy 4:60. Ms. Presswater.
Thank you, and I'm back. So this is for contractual services for speech and language services for students with IEPs. This is an agency that we are currently contracting with. We have increased the time from 1 day per week to 2.5 to 3 days per week based on the caseload size and services that are currently being provided by our current 2 speech and language pathologists. Their caseload sizes has far exceeded the recommendations for speech language pathologists, particularly at the high school level. So we are looking to balance their workload while also making sure that we're able to be consistent in providing the provision of special education services for speech and language to our students. The contract is set to not exceed $69,300 for the 2021 school year. Do we have any questions? I'm going to be saying this again for the next contract as well.
All right.
Yeah, this is not, my question, Shalima, is I heard from a community member and they had a concern that when students with IEPs were entering as freshmen, they got an orientation meeting and the parents had a plan made, but that students with 504s were not contacted by the school. And I wanted to know, I don't know if that was, whether that was their individual experience or if that is standard practice. And I guess I'm not really so much asking about that, but more as a general thing, do you feel that this increase will be sufficient to meet need? If that, does that make sense as a question?
I'm sorry, let me interject for just 1 second. That's not technically on the agenda for discussion this evening.
Okay.
So if we could, maybe Mary, if you wouldn't mind emailing the question to Dr. Pruitt Adams, and she can work to get you that answer, and then, you know,
Well-
if you want to add it to the board discussion, certainly can.
Yes, I guess the requested increase, as I understand it, is that we didn't have sufficient need. And I guess my question for this is do you feel that this is now going to be sufficient? Is this, you know,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Okay, that's
I understand. The what we did is we examined the caseloads, the number of the level of service, minutes of service for each student by each clinician that we have in district. And then we looked at the number of the recommendations for from the Association of Speech Language Pathology and Hearing for SLPs to see what would be that recommended caseload size, and actually based on the number of diverse learners that have speech language services in our district. So we do find this to be sustainable and to meet the needs of our district next year. And as things change, of course, we will course correct, but we do see this as after we did our assessment that this will meet our needs for next year.
That's great. Yeah, I mostly was trying to figure out if this was like, is this an incremental ask with a, you know, expectation that we might have to like bump again, or if it sounds like this is what you think we're going to need, which is great. Okay, that clarifies it for me. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Questions from anyone else?
The next item is the occupational therapist contract with Health Pro Pediatrics for the year 21-22. This too is from July 1 to June 30th. At the conclusion, we would ask to bring this forward for board approval at the June 24th board meeting, not to exceed the amount of $376. This item is in compliance with priority 2 and 4 and board policy 4:60. Making this presentation is Shalima Fletcher.
Thank you, Dr. Pruitt Adams. And this contract for special education contractual services for the 21-22 school year is a continuation of contractual services. We have the same allocation of 3 days per week, same hourly rate for $74 an hour for next school year. So this is a contract with a current agency, Health Pro Pediatrics, that we currently staff our occupational therapists through, and we're just continuing at the exact same rate and allocation for the next school year. This will not, as Dr. Pruitt Adams stated, the cost for this will not exceed $68,337 for the 2021-22 school year. Are there any questions?
Questions from board members? Don't see any. So forgive me, I should have mentioned this earlier and it completely slipped my mind. Fred Erkin is going to be joining us a little late this evening. He's coming from the girls wrestling meet. But he is interested in asking questions about the athletic trainers contract, which is the next item. Is there any way we can hold that until later in the meeting? I expect he'll be here shortly.
If you want to, we could go on to the next one.
Yeah, we can skip.
Yeah, and Sarah, there are questions about that. The contract doesn't seem to reflect the services at all. There's a patent infringement provision in there. There's deliverables in there. I would like to know who the district's purchasing coordinator is that can agree to addendum. I mean, it's a contract that seems written for a transaction that has nothing to do with the kind of services Athletico is providing.
Okay, well, we can ask those questions when the items when we come back to it. I think we're just gonna do G right now, which is the external building security services contract.
Yes. So our next item is the external building security services contract. This contract is at a rate of an hourly rate of $18.96. At the conclusion of this presentation, we would ask to move forward with the recommendation of Securitex Building Security Services contract at the June 28th Board of Education meeting, not for a 1-year contract for $18.96 per hour for a total of $47,324.16 for the year. This item is in compliance with strategic plan priority 4 and district policy 4:170 and 4:60. Bringing this presentation, Mr. Ronald Anderson and Mr. Dave Watson.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me? I have an earpiece in, just making sure.
Speak a little louder.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So the background, Securitex is our current external building security contractor. They're in charge of the Saturday, Sunday security rounds, and also they staff the building during holidays, special events, or say events as we have electrical loss or anything that causes our regular security not to be in the building, to the snow days, those type of things. Dave, can you give them a background on what Securitex does during the year?
Sure. Essentially, they do the Havoc along with fire patrols. They do rounds throughout the whole building, the outside of the building, inside of the building. They check all doors and windows, working to respond to let's say there's a water leak in a washroom. They immediately get a hold of the on-duty engineer, contact him so we don't have loss or we're not able to open up the next day. And then they do a variety of other events, like for instance, for voting, when we have the voting booths, we hire them out for the voting booths, along with holidays. And as Ron stated, occasionally we'll have a snow day and we'll be able to bring them in. They've been with us for approximately 7 years now.
So our summary of findings, we had the bid opening on May 11th. We had 3 bidders, and Securitex was the lowest responsible bidder, and they have a flat rate of $18.96, and that's the same rate that they had last year, due to Cook County did not increase the minimum wage, so they didn't increase their price as well. Do we have any questions?
Any questions, Marianne?
Just to, I'm not arguing against going with Securitex. It sounds like if we've had them for 7 years, you're probably happy with their services. But I'm just a little bit, I don't know, curious, I guess, about, we don't typically just choose the lowest bidder for something like this, right? Is it, presumably you're, we don't necessarily want the lowest bidder for security as a default, right? If that makes sense, right? So, so you're advocating this because you think they're a good company and you're happy with the services they're providing and so on and so forth. Does that make sense as a question?
Yes. So if there was a company that was better and was a little bit higher, we would recommend them. But these guys been doing a great job over the last several years. Next year, these been coming back every year. So next year, we want to bid out a multi-year contract. So it'll be 3 years, but we want to put in some things, some extra things inside of the RFP, such as training or something like that, to add an extra level of abilities for them to help out with our security management and security staff.
That's great. Yeah, I like it, especially if they're going to be having contact with students, and given the general conversations about that, ensuring that they are well trained for that need, it seems important. So that sounds great. Thank you.
Questions by the board members? I don't think I see any. Is that accurate? All right. So we could skip the one we already skipped, and maybe go to finance.
Instruction.
Oh, instruction. I'm sorry.
So the next item under instruction is the 2021-2022 reopening plan. We know this is something that everybody's been waiting for quite a while. We're going to do a very quick and brief presentation, and then it is recommended that the board approve the reopening plan at the special board meeting following the count. This item is in compliance with strategic plan priority 1, racial equity, priority 2, transformative education, priority 4, operations, facilities, and finance, and district policies 2:20 and 6:15. As we are pleased to announce that at the start, you know, to the plan, we said we're going to project it. That there will be links that you'll have to go to. You want to click on the plan? See it section. There you go. Thank you. Could you just put it in the presentation mode? Appreciate it. So as I said, we are pleased to announce that in the 2021-2022 school year, Oak Park River Forest High School, along with other high schools in the state of Illinois, will be returning to full in-person learning. There are some pieces that have to go to that. As you know, on May 19th of 2021, our state superintendent, Carmen Ayala, presented a resolution to the Illinois State Board of Education, which was unanimously passed. And in that, she outlined several steps. And one of the most important ones was that there would be full in-person learning for all students attendance days in the 21-22 school year. It also provided one exception, though, that schools must provide remote learning only for students who are not eligible for a COVID vaccine and also who are under a quarantine order by the local health department. The other thing that we've been told is that students must meet this scope criteria in order to have remote learning opportunities given to them. Superintendents across the state have also been told that a declaration following the end of this current year will be coming out. We are still waiting for specific guidelines, and I'm saying that to say that as a result of what we present today, depending on what we get next week, because we've been told there will be more information once we move to phase 5, which is tomorrow, that there will be some more clear guidance coming from the Illinois State Board of Education. So once we get that information, we will bring it forward. I also think it's important to note before we go into the specifics that there's the state is still pending information, as I said. There will be some pieces that we talk about as it relates to mitigation. There will still be mitigations in the upcoming year that will be in place, as well as some additional guidance with social distancing. We do know most recently, which was after we did this draft plan, that the current guidance will be 3 feet distancing. This plan comes in 2 parts. I'm going to turn it over for Greg to speak to one part. This plan comes in 2 parts. It's the part that we know that our families want to hear from us specifically as a school district and our staff and the board. The other component is tied to the ESSER 3 funds. As you know, the district has received ESSER funds. Those are the emergency funds. We have some that are coming ESSER 3. And in ESSER 3, there are some components that must be addressed: learning loss, social emotional learning, health and safety. You don't have to move. Health and safety, as well as capital improvements. So we will address those. It's also important to note that the ESSER application does not open until July 1, 2021, and we are targeted to get $14 million. 1.4. Right, keeping us together. $1.4 million, which must be expended over 3 years. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Johnson now, who will speak to the daily schedule, learning loss. He'll explain that, the social emotional supports, and the health safety procedures. We will then turn it over to the appendix, where we will go deep into what is expected for the ESSER grant. And during that time, we'll have Dr. Lloyd Fiorenza speak and Selima Francois Blue speak to the learning loss. Linda Parker will speak to social emotional. Rob Anderson will speak to the health and safety protocols. And Ron Anderson and Christopher Thiem will speak to the capital improvements. And once that is done, we will take any questions that you may have.
Well, as always, Dr. Prudadam, you have done such a good and thorough job that actually everything I was going to say is covered. So I'm going to turn this over now to talk about learning loss to Shalima Francois Blue and Dr. Lloyd Fiorenza, and then they'll turn it over to the other two other folks for the remaining two components of the plan.
Dr. Fiennes, would you like to start and I can go after you?
Absolutely. So where I will start is that, are we on the?
Could you click on the link
Yes.
that goes to the learning loss, please? You have to go down into the appendix. And there's a link that says for more detailed information. You go back into the plan. Would it be easier if I share my screen?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I got it. All right, so for more detailed information?
Yes, right there.
Yes.
If you could scroll down just a little bit, please. Oh, that's perfect. Thank you so much. So as you can see, we are currently providing the outlined reading and math interventions as well as research-based curricular programs. I'm not going to go through all of them, but these are the ones we currently are using to address learning loss. If you scroll down a little bit more, where I'll spend most of our time, keep going. Thank you, right here. Where I'll spend most of my time are the after-school academic support programs that we are interested in pursuing for next year, specifically to address learning loss. What I will say about some of these interventions and supports is that we currently provide interventions and supports like these, but we are taking what we've learned from the pandemic and the remote and hybrid opportunities, and we're kind of taking the best of that and bringing it into our opportunities next year to support students. So you'll see we want to provide targeted student assistance. The quick explanation of that is we want to assign a certified teacher to some of our high enrollment classes like algebra to work specifically with that algebra course-like team. This certified teacher will use the summative and formative assessment data to pull groups of students within the class to provide additional instruction or supplemental instruction in cooperation with the teacher. We then have targeted tutoring, which you know currently we offer the tutoring center. However, what we'd like to do is target students that are struggling and have specific skill deficits. And in lieu of their study hall, they would work directly with a tutor in this targeted tutoring opportunity to increase and improve in those specific skills, as well as executive functioning. We will have the testing center. We would also like to utilize the testing center in addition to its current role to support executive functioning support at times when the testing center might be a little less occupied. We want to expand our tutoring. That would involve engaging teachers in not only in-person tutoring opportunities, but also some virtual tutoring opportunities. Not to say that we would have teachers doing both. It merely is to say that we could expand our tutoring center hours so that some students who might have gone home or need to be at home can still access the tutoring center at 5 or 6 o'clock at night. And then finally, we are looking to provide some off-site tutoring in which we would use a community location where students feel comfortable on a monthly basis, likely on a Saturday or Sunday, to provide accessible tutoring to students as well. Ms. Francois Blue.
Thank you, Dr. Frienza. Thank you very much. If you can please scroll up just a little bit and I could, there you go, right there. Thank you very much. So as we look at specialized interventions and supports at the Tier 3 level, we're looking to create a Tier 3 bridge of interventions for academic and social emotional supports for students that are either being recommended for special education evaluations and or current diverse learners that have individualized education plans that are have significant complex mental health needs and or academic needs that is playing a huge part in how they return to in-person learning. We do have a number of our students that have still remained remote, that did not participate in hybrid learning. And as we reopen the school, we want to make sure that this is a positive pathway, and also we have the ability to place an undergird of support for those students as they return to in-person learning. We do also want to stretch the option of the learning lab from being just during the traditional day to extending that to our students that are specifically in the grades of 11th and 12th grades that are credit deficient and or have 70% less than 70% attendance this spring, data that we have reviewed this spring, and or received 2 or more failing classes. This is in order to provide our students with the necessary tools that they need in order to recoup some of those credits and also be on a pathway to graduation. We want to make sure that we're targeting those diverse learners in a very specific way. We also want to make sure that we highlight that this will be an evening learning lab option for those students. We have spent a lot of time talking to parents and caregivers of students that are within this category, and some of them are working or placing value on taking care of other siblings or other family members due to COVID or unrelated to COVID, and they need a different way to access learning, both either during the day and as well as in the evening. So this would be a way for us to provide that. Another tier 3 intervention, another option for tier 3 supports is to expand our transition services for our students that are going to be 18 to 22 with the anticipation of the enactment of House Bill, 2 House bills, House Bill 40 and House Bill 2478, I believe it's the number, to provide a robust set of transition plus services for our diverse learners in the ages of 18 and 22 across disability categories. This includes not just job training and coaching, but preparing them for life after high school, whether it's a pathway to college or a pathway to employment. I think we're scrolling down. Are we scrolling down?
Are you done with your section?
Yeah, yes, that's that section. I just needed to see what was at the bottom.
Then he has to go back to the document
Thank you.
and click on the social emotional section. When you get to the social emotional section, you will see another tab.
Thank you, Derek.
Oh,
Good
you're
evening. Good evening, everyone. And Derek can go straight to the top and stay between those. So I'm just going to quickly summarize 2 of the supports that you see here so that you can understand exactly what's been placed here. There are 2 different levels of social emotional support that's being provided. The first that you see here is on the tier 2 level, where we're going to be infusing research-based social emotional SEL programming into our school day in 2 different mannerisms provided through our MTSS and social emotional behavioral plan. One is in advisory in partnership with the Umoja Student Development Corporation. We will have activities infused into that area, as well as in interventions that we're using with small groups, and those will be using research-based curriculums that are listed there as sample items for how we will be actually implementing that with the students. The second thing that you see, and you can go down, Derek, to the social worker supports, our social workers will be providing the activities that you see below, and those are more on a tier 1 level. They will also be doing advisory push-ins as well as general classroom push-ins in order to teach wellness topics to students during their school day. We are also looking to have a wellness day clinic twice in our school year for next year, as well as publishing a wellness bulletin with different articles and topics, including self-care, getting involved, gratitude, different topics to help promote wellness amongst our students. Again, when we get to questions, if there are any, I can take those then, but I'm going to pass it on to the health and safety resources now.
Derek, you do the same thing for health and safety.
Thank you, Derek.
You're welcome.
So I'll be covering the health and safety along with Chris. So can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So we have on-site diagnostics with the Bionex now. That is a testing that is a testing for the COVID for the students and adults that the nurses will be doing upon hearing of any kind of symptoms from anyone. And we continue to encourage people who have any kind of COVID symptoms not to come to school, not come to work that day. So we continue to have long-term closure measures in place just in case we have to close. We know what to do. We have the same plan that we had in the first plan to take care of the school once we have long-term closures. The training and professional development, we will continue to have OSHA and CDC trainings for our custodial staff, which includes bloodborne pathogen, pandemic disinfecting, the ABCs and cleaning classroom chemistry, advanced disinfecting, restroom care, and classroom cleaning, just to name a few. Supplies that we have, we continue to supply the classrooms to make sure that every single classroom has the proper sanitizing supplies within the classrooms. Everything that we have that we supply is OSHA and EPA approved, especially we use the Nemesis on a regular basis, which have a 1 minute kill time for COVID. And we also have the hydrochlorosone cleaner that we use within the building.
And then capital improvements.
Yes. So capital improvements. So we continue with the capital improvements. We continue to increase our filtration system throughout the building with the MERV 13 system. And we also with the new additions to the building, we had that in the plans to make sure that we have the MERV 13. We went from MERV 9 to MERV 13 to make sure that we met the CDC standards for the filtration systems. We're also in our air handling units, we're putting what you call bipolar ionization. Almost drew a blank there. So the bipolar ionization also is it takes your MERVs up 4 to 5 MERVs. So say for instance we had a MERV 13, it takes it up to the effect of a MERV 18. So we also plan on with the new portions of the building with the 15 new classrooms, those filtration items will be in those areas as well. Chris, would you like to talk about the purchasing of the technology for the classrooms?
Sure. Yeah, we're staying very flexible in this area. As we did at the transition into both remote and into hybrid, we're watching trends. And so we're looking at what has remained effective in technology that will continue to remain so post-pandemic, and structuring our classroom support for that. In addition to that, we are looking at our network security monitoring services. There's a portion of the plan that includes the need for districts to prepare themselves to defend against cyber attacks and to increase cyber security. And so we're leveraging that as well. And then there, go back to that, there's one last piece there. Sorry, right there. Large auditorium streaming equipment is also a section that was mentioned in the framework that we received. And this might seem a little odd, but the fact is that with the streaming option in an auditorium, what you then can do is open up those events that were previously only physically available to parents and families, and make them a wider audience and wider availability. And so we're taking advantage of that as well and putting that in place.
So before we open up for questions, I do want to just go back and take a moment to say that once again, we are targeted to get 1.4 million. The application window opens on July 1. Districts must have their plans finalized and ready And for implementation, no less than 30 days before monies will be received, which would be possibly sometime late August, early September. Additionally, there will be tweaks to this plan. The next step for this plan is that, microphone's going in and out, I'm sorry, is that we will ask the board to approve it in our special board following the cow. Also, there's an opportunity for community members to offer public comments. That is also a requirement for this. Once that is done, then the plan will be sent to West Point and then posted on our website. Once again, we have been told not to be specific, too specific, to be more general, because plans will change as directions from ISB change. That's another reason where there are no cost factors built in at this time. That is at the direction of ISB. We're open for any questions that you have tied to the front portion of the plan, as well as the work components that are required under our direction from ISB for the external.
Questions from board members?
I'm ready.
Tom, go for it.
I have-
Sharing it.
I have 6 questions, so you might want to cut me off and do me in pieces, however you want to handle. First, thank you for the plan, and I want to emphasize what I've seen. It's absolutely critical that we provide our students with the necessary supports as we come out of this COVID year. So I know that seems to be the theme. Question 1. I heard reference to a $1.4 million grant. Could you elaborate or just briefly what that is? Or did I mishear?
Yeah, sure. So throughout the past, this whole past school year, there have been emergency funds that have been available to public schools in 3 waves. There was first the original ESSER funds, which came to us in the fall semester. ESSER 2 came as well. And ESSER 3 now is the most, it's the largest grant. It's the grant that has in some ways the most kind of stipulations. And that's what Dr. Adams is speaking to. And it's specifically designed to help support, in this case, students' transitions from remote hybrid experiences to in-person experiences.
The other thing that I think is, when we have sent to you invoices and talked about the monies that's been spent for COVID, there's 2 buckets where some of the money that we get back come from. One is, as Dr. Johnson indicated, on the ESSER dollars, and the other is FEMA. And so those were 2 opportunities for districts to support student learning.
Okay, thank you. Question 2 is, as we move to full in-person learning, are there any future plans where we anticipate the facilities not being available because of our construction work? If so, when, and what actions are we taking to to assure that it can be in person?
I'm sorry, okay. Mr. Anderson, I think Mr. Kosky is speaking more to the time frame for the construction work that is being done. It is our plan to have full in-person next year. I will say that the South Cafeteria, the Student Resource Center, that won't be open at the start of the school year. So there will be some adjustment that will have to be made to support all of our students on campus. But the time frame to open those spaces is in December, so they would be available second semester. Any other construction is tied to our long-term facilities plan, which Mr. Anderson can speak to, and our management.
The only thing that would slow us down is if the governor or the CDC increases the social distancing for lunch. That would cause a problem for the students and for the staff. because of the space that we have and the amount of students that we have.
Ron, I'm going to jump in because you said that, just so the public hears this as well. We have been operating this past school year with a requirement of 6 foot social distancing with all the kids facing the same direction, which had significant effects on our abilities to get large numbers of students in the building. Next year already, the governor has announced that it is 3 foot for schools, which mitigates that to a large extent. And we don't know if that's going to be further mitigated as we move into the summer and into the fall. So just that context,
So, okay, thank you. So what I'm hearing, just so that I'm clear, is that outside of changes in what the regulation are, recognizing as well there's transition, we do not have any forward plans beyond this summer that will cause us to not have students in our facility. Is that correct?
I want to clarify one question,
Yep.
and that's the summer. When we first started talking about the construction, and I may be wrong, if memory serves, there will be 2 summers that summer school is impacted. Is that correct? Or is that not correct? Because of classroom construction. I may be wrong, that's why I'm asking.
No, you are correct. The question originally, as I understood it, was regular school year. During this next summer, we anticipate an effect, yes.
Yeah, my question was not about the school year, and so thank you. It was I said for all learning moving forward. So just to understand it and how we can get ahead of it, recognizing that we are coming out of a pandemic. So let me. So.
Other options.
So does that, I might have been cut off. The next summer is anticipated not access to the building. Is that correct or not?
I don't think it was it, when we first started talking about amendment, like I said, memory serves me, there were 2 summers that would be impacted for summer school. That's what I was saying, is that correct?
Yes, we originally said that 2 summers could be impacted. The exact extent of that impact for next summer, 22-23, I can't state with specificity at this point. But I anticipate having restricted access for sure. Ron might be able to give a more thorough answer. But I want to be clear, Tom, we can look at that and get more information publicly available on that as quickly as we can. The purpose of this presentation was obviously to get this point out. So we don't have those details.
Understood. I just want to get ahead of it and not be surprised. So I would just say as an ask then, and it need not take up more time now, that we get an answer to that, and then as a board we can make the request. But my input would be then what action can we take? And again, it's all tied to how well we rebound from the learning loss, et cetera. So that was. Let me move on to my next question before. There's reference to exemption, or one exemption having to do with students who, I forget the term, can't be vaccinated.
Yeah.
Is that stating it fairly?
Yeah. The way the resolution reads is that remote learning can be the only remote learning that a district can provide is for a student who is for medical reasons cannot receive the COVID vaccine, or who are quarantined by the local health department. That's the stipulation within the resolution from the state superintendent.
Okay.
I will say, however, that we are one of the school districts that is working with the West Hawaii Regional Office of Education to possibly have a remote school housed at West Hawaii that would be grades K through 12, but that's still in the planning phase.
Yeah, can I just jump in for a sec, because I am confused about the language of the resolution. As I what I read in this agenda was that we must accommodate remote learning for those who can't vaccinate and are under quarantine. But it was that must that can like that I wasn't clear whether that opened the door to we may also choose to, or if that is just not allowed. And so
we must offer a remote opportunity for the students who meet those two criteria. We were told it can't be one or the other, they have to meet both. We asked if it was just a medically fragile child who could get the vaccine, could they get the remote? We were told no. We asked if a parent was against the vaccine, could the student get remote? We were told no. We even asked if it was for religious reasons that a student could not get the vaccine, could they get remote? We were told no. The expectation is that all students will be in person, and that's the one exception where a district must provide those students with remote learning opportunity.
So it is both must and prohibited from doing otherwise. Okay. And this is coming down from state.
This was in the resolution, which is attached from the state superintendent, and it was approved by unanimously by the Illinois State Board of Education. There is a webinar that many of us have signed up for next week because there's so much confusion around this very aspect. We've asked for guidance for clear criteria, to say that, anybody, not that they would go ahead and get a doctor's statement. And so we are asking the State Board of Education for some very clear directives around this so that districts know how to proceed and to even provide us with a form that must be filled out by a medical professional versus leaving it at each district to try to figure it out.
Sorry, Tom, it was one of my questions too. So
that's fine. It's better to, okay. My on that topic though, I'm hearing the word can't, right? But what about those who choose not to? That's a voluntary versus having are we measuring or doing anything to know who is and who is not vaccinated, I guess is the question.
We can ask who is and who isn't. We can't mandate that parents tell us who's vaccinated and who's not. A lot of times we find out if a parent calls and says John has been vaccinated, when we get a close contact test and we've been told that a kid has been exposed, there's a process where we call that family and notify them that their young person needs to quarantine. That is a point in time where parents tell us my kid's been vaccinated, then we ask for the appropriate documentation. But we cannot mandate. We've been told by the Oak Park Department of Public Health that that's a public record and we can't mandate that they share it.
Okay. And on the other side, and this is, I'm almost done here. The other side of that, which is in terms of non-student, which is staff and of all, all roles, are there any accommodations then that would fall into the next school year that would impact the ability of staff to be participating in full in-person learning?
At this point in time, all staff is expected to be full and in person. Now that does not preclude those individuals who, on a regular basis, from time to time, may have to go out for family medical leave or for other reasons. But at this point in time, the expectation is that all staff will be on site and in person.
Okay, thank you. Next, with reference to the learning loss, what can we as a board expect as you kind of assess and then use that data to, I guess, administer the plan you've put forth?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So it allows me to say this little kind of introduction that we'll reference later when we talk about the academic performance of our students that are future for you during the pandemic. First, learning loss is something that works in this kind of political context. It's a political phrase designed to try to figure out how the pandemic has affected learning. Operationalizing that in a high school, elementary, middle school means different things. And so what we are doing right now is taking a look at not only grade data to the extent that we have standardized test data from this past school year, i.e. SAT, our advanced placement data we will be taking a look at, as well as some other data that we have to help kind of gauge how our students have done this year against previous years, i.e. looking at credit attainment for our students throughout the school year. So we are in the process of reviewing that data throughout this past school year. Of course, our advanced placement scores aren't in yet, nor are the complete package of all of our SAT. But the board can anticipate a review of that to kind of set the stage for the effects of how next school year does or goes for us in August is our anticipation right now, our August count. Does that answer the question, Tom?
Yes. August is what I heard. We will get some kind of a report, if that's fair.
Yeah.
A report that says, here's our findings upon which we're going to then, you know, what you've shown is all the different interventions, et cetera, and supports we're going to offer, but that this is going to be some of the data that's used to execute that, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay. All right. My last one, based on the material you presented, there was reference to doing off-site tutoring, you know, on the weekends, et cetera. And I guess the question is, why off-site versus in the building?
Dr. Fioreza?
Yeah, so part of the concern is accessibility. Our students as easily able to access the high school versus meeting at the library, meeting at another location, teens will hang out. And so in addition to that, it is strategic in wanting to bring in more students that need that support, but maybe less likely to come to school on a Saturday or a Sunday, but would easily access the library, right? And so that's kind of the idea. We'll see. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, you're trying to meet students where they're at, is what I'm hearing. Okay, I just wanted to understand the rationale, and I think any outreach we can do to reach our students, to me, you know, as we're trying to get out of move into this year, that's wonderful. So thank you.
And partner with the community as well. This is also an opportunity to partner with the community in addition to meeting kids where they are. So it's twofold.
All right. Sarah, I am complete at the moment. Thank you.
Okay. Marianne?
Yeah, I'll start with something that jumps off of Tom's, and then I have 4 questions of my own. About the library, we actually, at the library when all this started in last March, or March, you know what I mean. And when the pandemic started, we opened the question of whether it would help with social distancing, et cetera, if we open the library spaces, because we were also closing the library for general visitors to schools. And we ran into a difficulty which had to do with state regulations around supervising kids and who would be able to do that and so on. So this isn't even really a question for you, but just kind of like putting it on your radar that the library may have questions about that. And whenever you get to that partnership stage, I think.
Yes, thank you so much. Appreciate that.
And then my questions. So I'm wondering what happened to the block scheduling and the question of the later start time.
Yes. Yeah, thanks for the question on that. We communicated out. I can't remember what it was. I think it was in one of the superintendent's money memos. And honestly, Mary Ann, that may have been just before your official report. I'm not quite
Okay.
sure. But it is something that garnered a lot of stakeholder interest, internal and external to the schools, to the whole students, faculty, parents, community members. But it is something that is not able to be pulled off just by, you know, snapping our fingers in the short time frame that we have. I could go into that in great detail. If you'd like, Lori can chime in about the master schedule and the effects of that. But pivoting in a way that would be functional for full in-person learning is a completely different pivot than it was to transition to the remote experience. It is not a topic that we are back burning. It's a topic that we're interested in pursuing and discussing. It's not to be an exact plan, but the conversation is live, but not for next school.
That's fine then. I think that was my main ask, I guess. I totally understand that, you know, right now the focus needs to be on making the transition back to in-person and not necessarily, you know, throwing too many balls at you guys to, you know, manage a whole new schedule on top of that. So that makes sense to me. I just wanted to be sure it stayed on live and came back onto the agenda because I do think the later start time, there's all these health benefits associated with it. So I don't want us to lose track of it. Question number 2, actually, I'm sorry, this wasn't a question. This was, I guess, a compliment on health and safety. I'm really glad to see we're upgrading the HVAC systems because that was something I researched, and it seems that relatively small investments have really great returns in terms of improving overall health. So, you know, I'm hoping that as a result of this, we'll have fewer colds and lose, you know, less student sickness generally and teacher sickness generally. Going forward, that would be, you know, one benefit out of all of this. Small question. I saw you said that you were going to explore streaming in the large auditorium, adding the AV, and I'm curious whether does the small auditorium already have that capability? I happened to, you know, like when I did the tour of the building, one of the things that was mentioned that I think the poetry slam is held there, and they say it's sold out every time, and you know, I'm like, it would be great to be able to broadcast the poetry slam. So what is our capability there?
Yeah, last I heard, we hadn't excluded theater from the streaming evaluation. We are still looking at the right solution for the right cost. Last solution that was being reviewed by the Fine Arts Department was capable of working in both locations. That is the goal.
That would be great.
Exactly what you talked about is a good example of why it's important to have it available in both spaces. And we're going to do everything we can to make that happen.
I look forward to seeing your numbers. So, but I'm glad it's on the table for what you're researching. And you know, I guess so. My last thing is about this. I don't know. I see that we are constrained by what the state level people are saying. And it's clear that you're already working on this and asking them all the questions. So, but I guess I just wanted to leave this with one example. I had a student last spring who we went remote, and a week later he dropped me a note unprompted to tell me that he had been about to drop out of college because he had crippling social anxiety, and it was only going remote that let him stay in and complete. And he completed well. He got a good grade in my class. Being able to record and present and so on. And so, you know, I'm not pushing for this to necessarily happen quickly again, but I hope that we are both keeping hybrid on the table, and also, I don't know if there have been any discussions about what's called high flex. And for board members who aren't familiar, I'll just read a paragraph out. That this model of high flex aims to make sure that students aren't penalized from a learning standpoint if they move back and forth between in-person and online participation in the class from week to week or even class session to class session. Instructors essentially must build a fully online course and a face-to-face version with the same learning outcomes in both. So this is not the same as hybrid. It's in fact very much what we're doing right now with these Zoom meetings, right? Where at any given meeting, board members might choose to be in person or remote. And our goal is that you can participate fully either way. And you can make that decision week to week. And a lot of, obviously, businesses and so on are trying to figure out to what extent they can or can't do that for their business. I'm seeing a lot of reports about, in Bloomberg about, people are quitting jobs because they, having tasted remote, they don't want to be forced back into the office again. And so there's clearly a lot of benefits to it. And I'm wondering whether, I don't know, like at the university level, high flex is a more demanding thing. It needs course development. We would normally be compensated separately for developing a hybrid course in normal times or a high flex course. And so I guess I just wanted to put that on the table, not for all teachers or all classes, but maybe somebody could prototype, a high flex course and be compensated for that course prep work so you could sort of assess the feasibility of it in a high school setting. Okay, that was a whole bunch of stuff. You really have to put me on the instructional committee, Sarah, and then I'll bring all this there.
So we don't negate anything that you have said. However, as a school district, we are governed under the authority of the Illinois State Board of Education.
Yeah.
And we've been told that the only remote learning for next year would be what we outlined.
Right.
Prior to you coming on the board, I guess about 2.5 years ago now, the state did give districts the option of e-learning. There was an e-learning plan that was an option that districts had. The plan had to be approved by the board and then sent to West 40. At that time, our board opted not to do the e-learning. There was some multiple concerns as to why the district should not go to e-learning. On March 13th, when we were being thrust into a pandemic, as a district, we were able to submit an emergency e-learning plan, which allowed us to do online learning for our students. 2 days later, the governor put in the term remote. We have been told that once the governor's plan, the orders go away, remote learning no longer exists. That's what we've been told.
Mm-hmm.
E-learning, those districts who had e-learning plans, and we are one, they have that plan. It is approved for 3 years. However, it is to be used for snow days and things like that, so you don't have to close school for snow days. Earlier in the presentation, you heard me make a comment that D200, along with others, about 6 other school districts in the West 40 Regional Education Office are working on a virtual school.
Mm-hmm.
It would be similar to our online program called ALI. However, there's some stipulations tied to that as well. And that is limited space is not open to all. It is covered by a grant that has to be approved at the state level. It would not be an Oakland River Park virtual school as a standalone. It would be comprised of other schools across the West 40 region. If that is approved, it would be for 3 types of students. The student who may be medically fragile, the student who thrives in a remote setting, which was why we as superintendents even took that forward as a recommendation to West 40, because we realized there were some students who did well in the remote setting, and then for our diverse students. As I said, there's an application that's in the process. And so that may happen, it may not. But if it does, we have meetings on Mondays. If that does happen, it is not just open to any parent who says, I want my kid in this program.
Right.
There will be specific criteria that must be met. And each school system that chooses to participate will only have so many slots. That will be coming forward to the board once all those particulars are worked out and the virtual school is a thumb.
Yep, I totally understand the constraints you're working under, and this really is maybe just something to keep in a back pocket or back of your mind, as perhaps this situation at the state level will change, and they may get a lot of feedback from people that might lead them to change their position on this.
We totally agree. That was when we heard that was one of the reasons we made the request for the virtual school, because there are kids, as you indicated, who have done well.
Yeah. Okay, that was my last point. Thank you.
All right.
Good evening, and first I'd like to apologize for being late. I was engaged in a school activity. I didn't catch the entire presentation, but I did want to piggyback a couple of things on what Tom had asked. Number one, any closure of the building next summer, I would request that we do everything humanly possible to have as much normal summer school as we can. Got a big building, we got lots of questions, lots of nooks and crannies, some creative work. I hope we can make sure that we have a full summer school. The other has to do, I heard that, and I'm appreciative and look forward to the report on this. I'm also very, very interested in the articulation with our grade school or our middle school districts with 90 and 97. And I think I stated this in the previous meeting, especially because as we go into the revised curriculum changes, that is hitting the kids that are going to be 8th graders this coming fall. And so we need to know where they're at as well, and how and have a process in place so that we know what supports they're going to be needing as they get into a higher honors type program.
I just wanted to ask a message, if you could put the mic a little closer. I think
Sorry.
Yep.
Did you want to speak to what's being done with our incoming freshmen in the grade?
No, I don't. I think I understand Fred's comment. The point is that as we transition, as we think about the August presentation, make sure we talk a little bit about, or to some extent, about the information that's coming in from our 8th grader families, and understand, particularly given the fact that we have a significant shift in how we're organizing and providing curriculum to our students for the following year, that we make sure we have really good information throughout the year about how those kids are doing in 8th grade, so that when they're here in 22, 23, we are best able to meet their needs. Is that speak to it? Got it.
All right. We haven't heard from Gina or Capri or Ralph, I believe. Any questions? I think so. Ralph?
My questions have been asked already. Now I could come up with a list of 9 just so I could one up Tom, but I think I'll stay right where I am. Literally, my questions have been asked, so I'm good.
Anyone else? All right, I have a couple of questions. So, and this is rhetorical, or at least not, I need an answer right now, but I'm curious. I suspect that as we move through the summer, hopefully, knock on wood, as protocols begin to be relaxed, we're in place by tomorrow, that some of the mitigations we have planned won't be necessary, right? Or at least won't be required. So I'm curious as to what of those we would keep, even if they're no longer required, or what that might look like. And I don't need an answer now. I'm just kind of putting it out there.
We've discussed that.
Oh, okay.
We are discontinuing the saliva screening as of June 19th. We will still, until they tell us otherwise, students will wear masks. And adults in the school will be told right now that masks are still required. We are discontinuing the self-help screener certification on a daily basis and the temperature checks And so right now, it will be the mask wearing and the social distancing as required, as Dr. Johnson indicated. It's now down to 3 feet in the lunchroom, day versus 6 feet. But that's where we are right now. We have the BioNext now, which is a rapid test, and that will be done to symptomatic students and adults.
Just sort of segues into my next question. So Greg had referenced that once we get to 3 feet, or now that we're at 3 feet, I guess I should say, you know, this eases our capacity issues. Does it totally alleviate them?
No.
So what happens if we're still at 3 feet, right? There's still needs to be rotation.
So that
No?
we just learned about that 3 feet this week. And so I have a feeling that as mitigations evolve, or if they get completely wiped out, then that's one thing. As they evolve throughout the summer, I anticipate a lot of this, you know. So just this week, we learned about the 3 feet for lunch. We are evaluating the spaces to see what that would mean for lunch periods next school year, whether we break them up into smaller periods, utilize the space, or how many we can get in, or we open campus for some kids who previously wouldn't be able to open. Those are all the options we're gonna have to consider. So we'll figure it out.
Is the only concern lunch? I mean, will classrooms be able to operate at capacity, et cetera?
We did not get a statement about lunch, about classrooms, as far as physical distancing. The 3 feet is still related to, the 3 feet is just related to lunch. However, I just want to, we are early in the game as far as the state letting us know how we're going to be able to respond to these mitigations. And there's no way that the mandate that Dr. Adams has mentioned a number of times, everybody in person in the fall can happen without a softening of those social distancing regulations. We're going to get guidance on that.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I should ask that question instead. All right, and then so this whole concept around we have to provide remote options for students in their very specific limited circumstances, but presumably in a school this size, there will be students that fall into those categories. Does that mean that teachers in a class are going to have to still bifurcate their attention the way they did this year, or would the hybrid school be able to take those students?
There are options that we can look at under the ESSER funds, and that is to even identify a long-term sub or flex individual, as you may say, to work with those students. They will still have to collaborate with the classroom teacher to get the information to provide the remote. But that's the other thing that ISB has indicated, that teachers should not have to teach synchronously and asynchronously at the same time.
Okay. That's all my questions. And those in this group, just Brandon or maybe Gina?
Hey, Sarah, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. I apologize for my tardiness. You may have mentioned this at the out. Did I go out? Can you still hear me? You may have answered this question at the outset. For the ESSER funds, how much staff input has there been in your processes for planning? Because I know that those ESSER funds, part of the process of those funds included making sure that there was staff voice engaged in that process. So I'm just curious.
You want to speak to some of it? I'll speak to some of it.
Yeah, sure. Regarding the accommodations and the supports that we're going to have in place, that you saw when we were talking about, you know, things under learning loss, that phrase, and also social and emotional supports. Yes, I mean those supports in some cases have been designed directly by, or in other cases with input from a variety of people in the building. So regarding those two pieces,
we also have our subgroups on our steering committee had different of this, and there are staff members on the various subcommittees.
Okay, so those subcommittees provided input into what's going to happen, and I was appreciative of seeing the pieces of the plan. I'm just checking to make sure like everyone's voice is represented in the process of creation of that.
Yes, even our faculty senate chair is on the steering committee.
Okay, great. And then the other question I have is like, will we get a breakdown of, and Tom kind of started in on this, I think a little bit, but the funds, the ESSER funds, how does that flow through our budget and what does that look like? So will we get some kind of breakdown of how that?
We will.
Can you not hear me again?
Were you asking about the breakdown of the funds?
Yes.
Okay, so.
Yeah, as well as how it fits with our budget, I just would like to see a larger picture of that.
We've been told at this point, was it 2 weeks ago, maybe, we were on the phone with Dr. Johnson, myself, and Ms. Sullivan, with our representative from West Point, and we were told we have a lot of information in our plan, because right now, the application doesn't open until July 1. So we were told not to put cost in yet until we really get to the point of being able to begin to break down the amount that will be needed. And that'll be sometime in the first part of July. So we've been told not to put dollars here. We are scheduled at this point to get 1.4 billion. That 1.4 million can be spent over a 3-year time span. And so what will happen is that as we solidify each of the pieces, then we'll be determined in how much money will be allocated towards each of those particular, I'm gonna call them line items now, I don't know if that's what they're gonna call it. But we're not privy to all of that information at this point in time, and we're directed to hold off in trying to do that until the application window is open.
Thank you so much for that. I just had one more comment, and I'm so disturbed by the term learning loss. Yes. Because it does not take into account how much learning has actually been acquired this year. Like if all we are focusing on is learning loss, we're missing out on all of the hard work that the educators put in this past year to ensure that our students were still learning, that they still were addressing standards, that they were still, like, I know the educators gave it everything that they had, and by focusing on learning loss, we're missing something. And I want to add to this conversation too, I'm appreciative of the social emotional learning aspects that have been included and the details that you have in the plan for that. I would love to make sure that students cannot learn if their brains can't be turned on because they're still traumatized. Mm-hmm. So if it, like Maslow's before Bloom's, you cannot get to a student's thinking capacity neurologically unless their social emotional well-being is what it needs to be. So what I'm not clear on, and the schedule, I guess I do have a question, I'm sorry. What I'm not clear on with the schedule is, like, I heard something about advisory and there being social emotional lessons in advisory, but I recall last year advisory was 10 minutes, 1 day a week. It was a limited amount of time. I'm just curious about what that might look like.
So Linda Parker could speak to that, but I do want to say we had a very lengthy discussion as well about the term learning loss. And I don't know if you were in the meeting when we first started, and Greg coined it perfectly as it is a political term because it makes some assumptions for one. It does not focus on the work that has been done and the standards that have been learned. And so in compliance with the components of being able, what we've been told with the ESSER plan, we use the term learning loss in compliance. And then Ms. Parker, would you speak to the advisory piece?
Sure, absolutely. We are implementing and you are right, Gina, it is a 15-minute advisory where we're trying to push in some tier 1 support for all students using the curriculum that we're devising from Umoja, where we'll actually be doing activities in that space in each and every grade level at kind of scaffolded for each grade level so that it's different for each of the grade levels. We also are using some of our PD time at the start of the school year to work with our teachers on how to create community agreements so that we're focusing on building relationships within classrooms and having students as a part of the development of those agreements so that they feel as though they have more trusted adults throughout the building because they know what's expected about them through each of the classrooms. And then the other tier 1 supports will come through the social workers in the push-in mannerism, as well as just trying to make sure that we have some attention paid to wellness outside of just visiting a student services person or actually having to be in those class settings. So the idea is that it's going to kind of infuse in those places and spread into our classroom spaces as well. But we're starting with that space and with those organized activities for them.
Thank you. I just want to point out that it takes at least 30 minutes to 45 minutes to create agreements with a group the size of a classroom. I also want to point out that 15 minutes is by the time the students get in, attendance gets taken, and you have an opportunity to actually do something that would be useful, they're going to have maybe 9 minutes to do something.
And we
10
have,
tops.
yeah, the teachers brought that up in our small group discussion because we have teachers actually helping to devise the slide decks that will be used in these spaces. And the one thing that I've been emphasizing with them is we start on time. So like we're not waiting for people to join us. When the bell rings, we're getting started so that everyone knows I need to get there and there's an urgency created to be involved from the start. So we do know it's limited, but I don't want to miss an opportunity to have it done because of that. So I'm pushing it.
Thank you, Miss. Thank you so much, Miss Parker. I get that. I just find that as not sufficient for social emotional development and learning.
I understand.
And I would hope that we find more ways to expand on that. And what I recall the students telling us during the school year last year was that advisory was a waste of time to them. I do recall one of the student reps coming to us and saying that. And so, and it was a similar time period. It's 5 minutes more now. I want to ensure that the students have the emotional supports that they need. I know that you all have put a lot of amazing things in place. I'm just very concerned about that limited amount of time. So I had to, had to say that. But I'm appreciative of all the pieces. I'm really loving the way your multi-tiered system of supports looks like it will work. Mm-hmm. And I do know that that's all very dependent on, there's a lot of factors in there, but there's, one last piece is,
I do want to say too, Gina, agreed about the time, and do know that there was not this structure to advisory before. We're trying to add this structure so that the students feel it a little bit more valuable to be in those spaces.
Thank you. And I also just want to point out that I highly doubt that our data is going to come back any different than the data we've seen over the past however many years. It's going to clearly delineate that certain students are still not having the same opportunities. And so I just want us to be mindful of that before we even get the data, because the data is likely not going to show us anything much different. So I'm appreciative that we do all these data dives and get all this data information, but it's not new data. It hasn't been new data for a very long time. And how are we pushing our system to change so that that data actually looks different? So thank you. I appreciate your answers too.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Gina. Do we have any other board member questions? Okay. I do want to thank the administration for pivoting yet again. This has been a year of pirouetting, frankly. As we said before, you've done an amazing job, and I have no doubt that next year is going to look different and a little happier and a little more in person, certainly than this year. So thank you for all of your efforts in this area.
Thank you. Before we go to the next item, I am going to request that we pull the athletic trainer service contract for 21 to 23. And we will bring it back.
No objection.
We will bring it back to the June 24 board. There's a board member asking why. We realize that the contract that is asserted is not the correct one.
The contract.
I received the message that the contract that is attached to the board item is not the correct contract.
Okay. Then this will come back to us on
the 24th.
24th.
The next item is Institute Day. In accordance with school code, we must bring this item forward. At the conclusion, we would ask for approval at the May 24th board meeting. This item is in compliance with strategic plan priorities 1 and 2 and district policy 6:20. Making this presentation is Dr. Lauren Hill.
Dr. Fiorenza, did you follow? We're ready for you. Might be a technical issue.
Can you hear us? Dr. Fiorenza, can you hear us?
Hello?
There we go.
Can you hear us? We can hear you.
Okay. I can't hear you. I can't hear anybody, but I will get started. Do we have,
Did you show the, did you click on the link? The document. No, wrong document.
does somebody have the,
Yes.
okay.
So it's a new agenda item.
Wait, Dr. Pruitt, you're really quiet.
I said that I was helping Mr. Hines find the item. There you go. Can you see it? And any closer in this mic and I would be wrong.
I don't see anything.
It's being shared now. Can you see it?
Okay, yes. So just, somebody talking, I don't want to be rude, okay. So just quickly, again, we will start our day with the welcome back, a number of highlights, introductions of the new faces, people that are in new places, board president remarks. All of our unions will give their remarks. The crux of what we will talk about in August, the meat of our day, will be a conversation around how we will begin. It's a new beginning. We have a new superintendent, lots of people in new roles. And then we will break up into two key professional development opportunities that are specific to our strategic plan: culture and climate, which, as Ms. Parker has already indicated, will be conversations with the teachers about how to formulate those community agreements. And then finally, our divisions will set PD goals around our three initiatives: assessment, restorative practices, and technology. And those will be specific to data collection, and we will bring back information to the board on a regular basis. And as you can see, the faculty meeting occurs from 1 to 3 as always. Then in January, we will capitalize on what we've already done with, again, another welcome back. We will do some data review. So what has taken place thus far in the school year. Again, we will update our goal progress, our progress monitoring for our goals through each of the divisions so that we stay data driven. In January, we will have our care team meetings. Culture and climate will, in that same vein of data review, be doing those community agreement reviews to make adjustments to our teachers' plans. And then we end with our faculty senate meeting. So quick overview. Any questions? If I can hear you.
Questions from the board?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Tom.
No, can she hear me?
2 minutes.
Yeah, so I will do my best to field questions if Lori cannot hear.
I just heard somebody. I heard somebody.
It's Tom.
I've been doing it, and we will cover your question one way or the other, okay?
I have a two-part question, which is, you use the words "as always," which is the faculty senate meeting. What is always? I mean,
it's part of the agreement that those Institute days allow an opportunity for faculty senate to meet with the entire faculty to go over items that are faculty senate related. A contractual administration isn't in that part. That's solely about their contractual obligations, questions they might have. Sheila Harden fields any questions and provides information.
And to add a phrase there too as well, Tom, that has been a past practice at the high school for several years.
So not an agreement, but a practice.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Tom?
Negative.
All right, other questions from board members? Oh, I think I see any questions. Okay, thank you so much, Lori. If you can hear me.
Thank you. The next item is under policy, and it is the Tri-District Technology Consortium Agreement Extension. At the conclusion of this presentation, it is recommended that the item be brought forward for approval at the June 24th board meeting. This item is in compliance with strategic plan priority 4 operations, facilities, and finance, and district policy 4.10. Making the presentations, Mr. Christopher King.
Good evening. This is a continuation of our tri-district agreement that was originally on April of 2017. We entered into this between our 3 districts. For those that are new to what this is, refresher, this allows 3 districts to work as a single entity in purchasing technology licenses and in working together on projects. We've got some details as to what dollar amount the different districts have saved over the course of this last year, as well as some of the planning phases that we're entering into in the coming year to create opportunities for all 3 districts to utilize internet, secure internet in our different districts, allowing us such things as backup services, disaster recovery systems, having a backup of internet at one site to be able to provide it to another, and so forth. This is the second of 2 allowed 1-year extensions on the board agreement. And so through the course of this coming year, we're going to review the agreement as it stands right now. We're not looking to change a lot, but we are going to review it with our due diligence as we're preparing for that next year, where we'll be bringing you the core agreement for a multi-year term. So I'd like to open it up to any questions.
Are there any questions from board members? I see any.
That concludes all of our items.
So next we have future agenda items. I don't know if there's anything anybody would like to bring that we haven't mentioned a couple weeks ago in our last meeting. But if there is, now's the time.
Sarah?
Yes.
I would like to, and I'll just bring it up. It's something that's been talked about or questions I've asked, but to put it in formality, is a very simplistic, high-level financial recap as it relates to COVID, okay? And it should include, 3 things. 1, what incremental expenses we've had. 2, what costs we have not incurred, and not be a whole, it should be a number. And then 3, what financial incremental revenue we've received, AKA financial grants, just for the fiscal year. And I don't know. So as an action, agenda item, I don't know if that's an agenda item or a request to get that, but it just puts a bow around the big picture finances related to COVID. Does that make sense?
Yes, I believe so. So I would like to ask, is that the will of the board? I would support that request. It's like Craig would support that request. Gina? Okay. So it sounds like we have a consensus from the folks I can see on my screen. And I think that maybe could be a document, right? Like that could be a report, not necessarily a presentation. That seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay, anybody else? Great. I have a request, but it's a long range one, so I just want to kind of put it in people's minds, but I'd be curious after the summer and after we see if any students actually take advantage of this sort of like free summer school option, right? If we see an increase in enrollment, if there would be any merit to seeing whether that's something should continue or not, going forward into future years. But again, there's certainly no, I don't think we have an issue with it at this point, but that's just a thought.
We are slated right now in October to present summer school kind of evaluation to the board, and we can make sure that this question is addressed within that report.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. That's a little work. I think it is the best individual board members of this.
Can I just want to echo that. I would like to see that. It can be connected to that or not. I realized I don't know to what extent students have fees that they're expected. I just don't know what the high school does in terms of fees. And so if I could be informed on that at some point, that would be great. It's one of the big distinctions between how the library operates and the Park District operates, right? Is that the library didn't do anything unless they could make it free to the public. And the Park District, I think, went for, well, if we charge some fees, we can do more stuff as a philosophy. And so I'd like to know where the high school falls on that.
Yeah, every year we are presented with a budget item, which are not a budget item, but an action item on materials fees, which is, I think, specifically what you're speaking to. So yes, we'll absolutely be informed and you'll be an active participant in those conversations. All right, so I move that we adjourn the committee of the whole. Is there, but we're not done, so don't get too excited. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, and so stay tuned, don't go anywhere. It's the right agenda. We're going to roll right into our special board meeting. So we are still virtual for the same reasons. It's still June 10th of 2021. It's now 8:30 p.m. And we are virtual due to the ongoing pandemic. I will not belabor the we just did this, but I do declare as a body that it's not practical or prudent to have an in-person meeting tonight. So we are virtual in keeping with Governor Pritzker's prior public acts. Can we have a roll call, please? Or yeah, call roll. And if you're talking, you can hear you.
Here.
Gail is muted.
I can't hear Gail at all.
Yep, me neither.
I can read her lip.
Oh, yeah. That's
Okay. Dr. Mohanraj?
here.
Mr. Arkin?
Here.
Mr. Henry?
Here.
Mr. Martiri?
Present.
Ms. Harris?
Here.
And Ms. Dixon-Spivey?
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Give me 1 second to navigate back. All right, so we are going to go to closed session. So I move that we enter closed session for the purpose of discussing the appointments, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district, a legal counsel for the district, and independent contractors and specific volunteers, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee or against legal counsel for the district to determine its validity. Litigation when there's an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular district has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the district finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the closed meeting minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Gail, could you please call the roll?
Dr. Mohanraj?
Yes.
Mr. Arkin?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.
Mr. Martiri?
Yep.
Ms. Harris?
Here.
Mr. Kowski?
Yes.
And Ms. Dixon?
Are you all not hearing me?
We can hear you now. Yeah, we couldn't hear you at first. I'm here. So if folks could please log out of this Zoom link and then go to your email, you have a closed session link. We will be back into open session in sometime later, an hour maybe.
I contract could have implications and it's not being something not everybody will know, but some candidates might not feel confident enough to.
Is it too soon for a motion to adjourn?
Maybe I don't know, right? But
I guess we'll find out.
but they just feel that.
I mean, you make a good
We just
point.
didn't mention that.
You make an excellent point because there may be some who will say, well, the board approved me, but I don't have my
Well,
contract.
the phrase that we always talk about.
So,
Don't resign your job.
well, it'll be approved.
We are live.
Where's Chris?
He's on his way.
Hello?
You guys here?
Chris is coming.
Christmas is coming?
Yeah, Christmas. Eventually, on these hot days, I could use Christmas. You are so lucky you're so lucky you're at home. It's very hot in the boardroom.
What are they on? Hello? Do you need a ride?
No.
You sure?
I don't know if others can hear Sarah, but I couldn't hear Sarah. I can only hear Dr. Pruitt Adams.
Hello?
Yep. Try again.
This here? Yes, okay, good. All right, excellent. Okay, welcome back to open session. All right, so our first action item this evening is regarding the Oak Park and River Forest High School District 200, 2021, 2022.
I'm sorry. We have to do the public.
I am so sorry.
To see if there are any comments.
Forgive me, I totally was reading the wrong part of the agenda. Bill, do you have public comment?
No, for neither one of them.
Okay, so
Areas.
no public comment and no comments regarding the reopening plan.
Correct.
Right, thank you.
Mhm.
So I move that we approve the Oak Park and River Forest High School District 200, 2021, 2022 reopening plan. Is there a second?
Second.
And this item was discussed an hour ago. So I think we can go straight to roll call vote, please, Chair. Yeah.
Mr. Martieri,
Yes.
Ms. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Kofsky,
Yes.
Dr. Mohan Raj,
Yes.
Mr. Arkin,
Yes.
Mr. Henry,
Yes.
and Ms. Dixon Spivey.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next action item, I move to approve the personnel recommendations, including the new hires, transfers, summer school hires. Is there a second?
Second.
Bill, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Henry,
Yes.
Mr. Martieri,
Yes.
Ms. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Kofsky,
Yes.
Dr. Mohan Raj,
Yes.
Mr. Arkin,
Yes.
and Ms. Dixon Spivey.
Yes. All right, and then our last item of the evening, I move to approve a one-year extension of the space sharing agreement between the district and the River Forest Community Center. Is there a second?
Second.
This is an item that we've already discussed in a previous meeting. Are there any Further questions from the board? Carol, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Arkin,
Yes.
Mr. Henry,
Yes.
Ms. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Kovsky,
Yes.
Dr. Mohanraj,
Yes.
Mr. Martiri,
Yep.
and Ms. Dixon Spivey.
Yes.
Thank
All
you.
right. It is 9:27. I would note the time. This might not happen again. I move to adjourn.
Second.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a great evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Good job. You are leaving me with a precedent.